Today's episode is going to be about parking, which is often a big problem on low-budget sets. A lot of the time you're going to find that you're shooting in a residential location and there's just not enough parking for everybody. Often you'll end up trying to cram cars into places that they really shouldn't be going and very likely tear up somebody's yard in the process. There are a lot of ways you can avoid this problem. It's very common for people on your cast or crew to park where they're not supposed to. This usually involves the neighbors, and believe me, you will hear about it. Don't ever think that the neighbors don't have every right in the world to complain if your car is parked even a few inches onto their property. Tires can do a lot of damage to lawns, and some people just don't like that kind of invasiveness. Now, if your neighbors have driveways that aren't completely used all the time, you might want to consider making a deal with them. Sometimes a neighbor who has a few extra parking spaces wouldn't mind renting them to you for the week or the day or however long you need them, and usually at a bargain. If you have an awful lot of cars to park, this same tactic can be used with small businesses. You might look at convenience stores or even office buildings in the general area and talk to the managers. Sometimes you can make arrangements to be able to park several cars on a location for very little money. But some businesses that have regular traffic hours might confine you to a certain time limit, usually in the evenings. So if you're doing night shoots, this works out perfectly. Now, you might not be able to find a decent parking area close to your location. What you don't want to do is have this parking area too far away and force your cast and crew to lug all the equipment in as they walk to the location. This is not a great way to start out a day for anybody, and it is going to result in a very tired and probably a little bit angry cast and crew every morning, especially if it happens to be raining. The solution to this is to come up with a shuttling system. While you can hire a professional shuttle or you can rent a large shuttle van, you might also just be able to find a PA with a van that can be used as your personal shuttle for your cast and crew. Just make sure to mark this van so everybody knows what they're looking for. Put it on the call sheet so anybody that's going to use this service will know exactly which vehicle to look for and exactly where to be. Make sure that the shuttle is large enough not only for the amount of people that are going to be in it, but also the equipment. Remember, your camera crew, your makeup artists, your costumers, all of these people are very likely to be carrying a lot of bags and equipment that also need to make their way to the location. If you need to, use more than one shuttle van. Shuttles are also really great if you're housing most of your cast and crew at a nearby hotel. This makes it very convenient for people once they get up, get dressed, and ready for the day to just meet the shuttle in the parking lot. In some locations, it's going to be impossible for a vehicle to get to. These are usually the more remote locations, such as cabins in the woods. Try to avoid these kinds of locations if possible, as they can become very problematic, especially over several days. If you are shooting in a remote location and you do have a parking area set up, make sure that the area is well lit. You never know what kind of creatures are going to be lurking around in the parking lot after dark, and it will be difficult for your cast and crew to see them as they return to their cars at the end of the shoot. One thing you never want to do is just assume that something's going to be okay when it comes to parking. Even that abandoned house that's been sitting around empty forever is still a potential problem if you decide that you're going to just park a bunch of cars in there. You might think nobody will notice, but believe me, they will. And it's very important to remember that parking where you do not have permission is in fact a crime in most places. This can result in a fine or even being arrested and going to jail. Not only for you, but also your entire cast and crew, anybody who has parked there. So always make sure that you get permission to park somewhere from the owners and get it in writing before turning any type of private property into a parking lot. Sometimes your only option is going to be public parking, which charges a fine per day. Always, and I mean always, reimburse your cast and crew when it comes to parking. There is nothing more frustrating to be working on a low-budget production where you're not getting paid anywhere near scale and then having to dole out a few bucks every day just to be able to park your car near the location. But with a little careful planning and knowing what kinds of cars to expect, who's driving what, and what time they need to be places, you should be able to set up a very effective shuttle system. This will save you an awful lot of time and aggravation, and with a little bit of wheeling and dealing, you should be able to set up not only parking but also shuttle service for your cast and crew. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Unconnected Filmmaker, and if you found this information useful and want to be notified when the next video premieres, just hit that subscribe button. Or if you have anything you'd like to see an episode on, feel free to comment below. See you next time, and keep those cameras rolling.